Hi, I'm Jamie Carr, and in this video I'm going to talk about climate change and the effects that this is having and will have on our environment and on life on Earth. The Earth's climate is a complex system, and in recent times mounting evidence is beginning to show that human actions are causing changes to the climate system. The main drivers of these changes are what is known as greenhouse gases. These are so called because they cause solar energy, or heat, to remain trapped beneath the Earth's atmosphere, much like the process that you might see in your garden greenhouse that allows it to stay warmer inside than outside. So where are all these greenhouse gases coming from? Well, the ones that we're particularly interested in are the ones that contain carbon, particularly carbon dioxide and methane. Now, much of the world's carbon is stored in living organisms or in organisms that were once living. For example, trees hold a great deal of carbon, and when trees die, much of their material is buried underground and goes on to form coal. Small organisms living in the ocean, when they die, can sink to the ocean floor, and eventually they become compressed and go on to form crude oil. These substances are often known as fossil fuels. Fossil because they are formed of once living organisms that have not been allowed to decay, and fuel because humans have recently found ways to extract their energy and use it for their own benefits. When this stored carbon is burned or allowed to decay, it can enter the atmosphere and goes on to exert its greenhouse effects. Many human activities can generate greenhouse gases. Some of the most important ones include the burning of fossil fuels, perhaps for transportation or to generate energy to be used in homes or in industry. Greenhouse gases are also generated through the clearance of carbon-rich forests and the draining of wetlands to make way for agriculture and development. The raising of livestock can also generate greenhouse gases. Livestock are often very inefficient at storing the carbon that is found in their food, and this passes right through their system and is emitted into the atmosphere in the form of methane. With all of the recent media coverage, it may be tempting to think that the greenhouse effect is a new phenomenon. In fact, the composition of the atmosphere, and indeed the Earth's climate system, have been changing for as long as the atmosphere has existed, which is around 4 to 5 billion years. Well, the important thing to remember is that today's climate system and the conditions that we experience on Earth have taken a long time to develop, and this has allowed time for Earth's ecosystems to adapt to these conditions accordingly. However, the climate is now changing much more rapidly than before, which is posing a range of problems to biodiversity and ecosystems, especially as these are often facing other pressures which are reviewed elsewhere in this course. So, what are these climate changes that we keep hearing about? Well, one thing that we can be sure of is that the Earth will become warmer. This warming will not be uniform across the planet, and it's not possible to say exactly how warm things will become, but one thing that we can say with certainty is that the Earth will become warmer. Patterns of precipitation, in the form of rain, sleet, snow or hail, will also change, although it's not always possible to say exactly how. In many areas, events such as droughts and floods may become more frequent or more severe. We might also see changes in the frequency and severity of other weather events, such as storms or typhoons. For example, Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines. From these direct climatic changes, there are a range of significant knock-on impacts. For example, large extents of snow and ice, such as those found in montane glaciers, at the poles, or in permanent frosts, are beginning to melt. This can cause the sea level to rise. Existing deserts are expected to expand, while hotter temperatures and decreased rainfall are expected to lead to increases in the frequency and severity of wildfires. This has serious implications for us. Fresh water may become more scarce, challenging agriculture, industry, and our ability to survive. Rising seas will threaten human coastal developments, while extreme events such as wildfires and storms will continue to endanger human lives. As with humans, biodiversity will also be impacted by climate change. Every species has certain requirements for life which can influence where it is found. For example, how hot or how cold it needs the temperature to be. When conditions change beyond tolerable levels, species either need to somehow adapt, to move somewhere more suitable, or to die. In general, species can be expected to either move away from the equator or to higher altitudes where temperatures are cooler. However, this is really an oversimplification, and in many cases, species are simply not able to move. either because some kind of barrier prevents them from doing so, or because they're simply not good at moving. Simple instances of species negatively impacted by climate change include the familiar polar bear, whose ice habitat is shrinking as it continues to melt. In southern Africa, the quiver tree, which is the national tree of Namibia, is already known to be dying of drought and heat stress in the drier, more northern part of its range. Although it is known to be extending its range into the cooler, more southern areas, this is not happening at a rate fast enough to keep up with losses in the north. As such, its overall global range is known to be shrinking. Climate change can also affect freshwater systems. A good example of this is the salmon, which needs to migrate from the sea into rivers and streams in order to breed. Many of these streams are fed by melting montane glaciers, which, if they melt too quickly, will fail to provide the water and thus the conditions that the salmon need in order to breed. In the marine environment, warming sea temperatures can lead to coral bleaching events, such as that seen on Australia's Great Barrier Reef in 2002. Coral bleaching occurs when the coral expels the symbiotic organism known as zooxanthellae, which lives within its tissues. This can result in increased coral mortality. Ocean acidification, which is caused by CO2 dissolving into the ocean and causes its pH to drop, can lead to the dissolving of coral's calcium carbonate skeleton. This could also affect other species, such as marine mollusks. There are some uncertainties surrounding climate change, such as the rate of warming that we will see, or the exact changes in precipitation patterns. This can lead to confusion and often skepticism around climate change altogether. Nevertheless, it is important to realise that even though there are uncertainties surrounding climate change, 97% of climate scientists do agree that climate change is resulting from human actions, and that we need to act now to reduce our emissions and to make sure that things do not become irreversible. Now, complete the quick quiz to put what you've learned here into action. In the next lesson, we'll be looking at how conservationists decide what to conserve.